Dr. Holbrook, in Peru we have a debate about a ministry on science and technology. And from your experience, do you think it could be positive or negative, the creation of this ministry?
Well, I will start by saying two things. First of all, I am biased because I did work in the Ministry of Science and Technology, so that's a bias. But second of all, I think any debate about science and technology is valuable. So simply to say, no, we should not have this debate, we should not have a ministry is probably not correct. But I do think that the question of whether or not it is a ministry, a council, an academy, a committee, or some combination of all of these is very important. And the second thing is, it must not be a ministry just of bureaucrats, but it must be inclusive. People from the academic world, people from government, people from industry. One of the best ways, let us say, assume that there is to be a ministry, one thing would be to have appointments limited to 3 years, and that it would be like a fellowship. You go and work in a ministry for 3 years, and then you go back to wherever you came from.
Politicians don't understand science and technology.
Well,
Canada
it's the same thing. Most politicians in Canada are lawyers. That I think is true everywhere.
In Germany, the president is a physicist.
Yes, well,
and it seems to be that in China, the central government group is.
China is an interesting exception. Yes, there are many more engineers in the Central Committee of the Communist Party there than in just about any, well, probably any other government in the world. That's cultural to a certain extent. And we have to understand that we're not operating with science and technology does not just operate by itself, it has to operate within a cultural basis. And without going into details, the science and technology is very much associated with the culture of the nation in question. And there are big differences between the scientific culture of, say, Canada and even the United States. There are huge differences between the two. We approach things, particularly large engineering projects, in quite a different way. And a lot of it is to do with our history, our culture, our geography, our climate.
But in Germany also there is a very, very strong culture of science and technology.
Yes. It changes from country to country. In Britain, not so. So it's not necessarily something that I think comes from the legal system. It often depends very much on what you might call the demand side. That in a particular country, in Germany, they needed, it's a manufacturing economy, they need engineers and scientists to support their manufacturing. In Canada, we're not so much a manufacturing economy, we are, for the most part, a resource-based economy. But again, what we're doing is we have to have engineers and scientists that enable us to exploit the resources. That being said, that is an entirely different type of science and technology than what is required for manufacturing. And it also means that we have to approach things like transportation and communication in a completely different way.
Obama is modifying immigration policy to attract brains. How about Canada?
Canada has always had a policy of attracting highly skilled people from outside. There are two things. As I will say in the lecture later on, Canada does not have a written science and technology policy, but it has had a consistent one for at least 40 years. And one of the elements of that policy has always been to try and attract skilled people from around the world. And usually skilled people are given quick entry into the country. The consequence is that, particularly in recent years, when the American market has been closed to people from abroad, we see them coming to Canada instead. And indeed, several US firms have opened Canadian subsidiaries simply so they can attract employees from the best of the best from around the world, and have them near their head offices, but not inside the United States.
Do you have some counsel to tell us?
I think the best consultation that any foreigner can ever give is that simply saying they don't know enough about the problem. I think that the only thing that I can do, and I think that, is simply say we have a certain set of experiences. Yes, Canada had a Ministry of Science and Technology. In fact, if you go far enough back into the 1960s, it started out as an office inside the Prime Minister's office, inside the Privy Council office. It then grew to become a separate ministry. It existed as a separate ministry for about 40 years, and then was absorbed into the Ministry of Industry, primarily because of the nature of our Constitution, which gives economic powers to the central government, but social authority to the provincial government, so that the Ministry of Science and Technology always basically had an economic bias to it. Now, it still exists. There is still a group within the Ministry of Industry, within Industry Canada, as we call it, which looks at science and technology policy. But that's a relatively small group, and it serves as a body to advise the Minister of Industry on pretty much the economic issues relating to science and technology. But again, it's multidisciplinary. It's not simply looking at a specific technology and making a recommendation. It's saying we have to consider all of these different factors.